Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dagger, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Seung Chan Lim. If I say that right, I'll call
Pretty good.
Yeah, I'll call him Slim the rest of the way through. Who believes leaders who have empathetic relationships with themselves, their family members, their team, and their customers not only have lives that are more healthy and meaningful, but also more creative and effective. Empathy by Design is an online workshop for individuals motivated to lead their team and organization with or without authority through the difficult process of change, development, or innovation, and is what we're going to talk about today. But before we start, Slim, okay, I'd like to take a moment and reflect on your past work, the book you authored, okay?
Okay.
And it was titled Realizing Empathy. Okay, I have it right here. All right, but the wording's a little light colored, so you can't read it well. But
that's right.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about that book, just quickly. Okay.
Sure. So basically, that book is kind of cataloging or journaling my journey of transition from my previous life, which is working inside human-centered design. And then moving on to what I'm doing now, which is focusing on human relationships. So what happened in between, like, why would you go from doing human-centered design to focusing on human relationships? Well, the answer is in that book.
Okay. Well,
it's a big mystery.
So many authors write a book and they put a book out in that, and then they learn a lot from it. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
What did you learn from it?
Oh my God! I can't even. Wow. So I think the first, I'll just go in like just the thing that comes to my mind immediately. So the first thing that I learned, I completely misunderstood who the book was for, and that I think was one of the most profound realizations I had, and this is why. So when I wrote the book because at the time I was a bit disgruntled with my experience in human-centered design. And I think this is an experience that many people, especially consultants or design consultants, share, which is they are hired as outside experts who know about design thinking and human-centered design processes and these wonderful things. And then they try to help these organizations to implement design thinking or innovative ways of developing products. And then they realize that they either don't listen to you or they end up canceling the project or somehow making things not the way you thought it was going to go. And you become extremely frustrated and maybe a bit disgruntled at the fact that you are not able to have the kind of impact you wanted to have, right? So the reason why I wrote the book is I had that mindset, and then I took some time off to go to art school. And I wanted to find out, just take some time off for myself to do art. And I thought, now I don't have anybody to convince. I have no clients. This is going to be fantastic, right? Only to find out that even when I have no client, even if I have nobody to convince, and I go into a wood shop trying to make my own piece of furniture, I will still get frustrated because the wood wouldn't even do what I wanted to do. It just would not, right? So this had nothing to do with, it had something to do with, but it wasn't entirely about other people. It was about how I'm actually approaching these relationships. And if I approach the same attitude I have with people that I had in the past, when I approach that same way with wood, I think of wood as a problem. Oh my God, like, why wouldn't the wood bend the way I want it to bend so that I can make this wonderful piece of furniture that is going to eventually make people's lives better? And what kind of crappy material is this, right? So that's what I learned from while writing the book, right? But then when I came out of the book and then having written the book, try to go back to my previous tribe of designers and then tell them this is what I've learned and try to convince them that the way we're doing design is wrong, they just weren't having it. They were not very interested. It's like, oh, it sounds like a nice idea, but we still think our clients have no clue. They just don't understand the value of design. they need to really, go through something before they'll realize how important design is. Right? Now, this was back in 2011, mind you. I think a lot of things have changed since then. And a lot of designers are now in executive positions, and they're now holding positions of power, and they have some influence. And now that they've become the man, they also come to realize, this top management stuff is actually not that easy. It really is not easy. It's not simply about convincing people of the value of design. It's really about having this genuine, authentic relationship with people of trust and respect. Because without that, no amount of convincing is ever going to change people's minds. And I think that is something that's super important. And that's something that I've learned many, 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 many times over the course of the past few years.
And I think that's very well said, because anymore, I don't feel like a consultant when I go in somewhere. It's more as I feel like I need to be a facilitator.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Is that a good way to? I mean, to kind of phrase it is maybe the attitude that you have, because you're not the overriding expert to the lean sensei, okay, that goes in there and tells someone, oh, to do this. It's more of a discovery facilitating process about getting work done. Okay.
Right. And I think it's one of those things when so the word facilitator is interesting, because when I use that word, some people kind of look at it a bit too detached. So what I've come to learn is, the word facilitator might not come across to everybody as having the quality that they really want. I think what they really want is to feel supported. And they really want to feel that there is somebody who got their back. And then because of the amount of uncertainty and ambiguity involved in whatever change or development or innovation process, they want somebody that they can actually help them as a genuine supporter. So sometimes, as much as I love the word facilitator, I've had some instances where people felt the word facilitator is a bit too detached. So I think that's something worth mentioning.
Oh, and I do believe that, because I think that's what get people. What am I hiring you for?
Yeah. That sounds obvious to you, but for whatever reason, it took me a long time.
You approached me a few weeks ago, and we were talking, and I was really intrigued by your upcoming work program that you have starting up. Instead of kind of meandering around and everything about it, let's kind of just get the elevator speech out of the way, okay? And tell me about it, okay? What's the program about?
Well, I think it's exactly about what we just spoke about, right? So I've met many designers, and also people, also executive leaders of companies, namely CEOs, right, who really want to change things, right? And it may be that they want to bring design thinking into their organization, or maybe they want to bring, agile, lean, whatever it is. There's so many different things you could potentially bring into your organization. But the way they approach this, whatever the actual thing you want to bring in is, if you're the CEO, it's usually top down, right? It's like, this is the thing. You guys make this happen. Or if it's bottom up, these, again, just like how I was as a designer, we're like, duh, why wouldn't upper management understand the value of this? This is so obvious. Of course we should be user-centered. Of course we should be doing this and that. And then they just, kind of point their fingers at upper management for being stupid or idiots, right? I don't think either the approach is going to actually bring about what either of them really want, which is to actually make things better. Right? And I think that is a big blind spot in a lot of different cases. And I haven't seen many courses that specifically focus on that instead of focusing on design thinking or agile or whatever those things. So that human relationship aspect is the core of this particular program, and really honing in on that element through the lens of empathy is what this course is about.
Was there a need that drove this workshop, or you getting started with the workshop, or was there just the natural evolution of your offerings, let's say?
I think it's all of the above, right? So what I did in the beginning was I started off from the book tour. I was giving talks, right? And once again, remember that at the time I still had no idea who my audience was. So I was just trying to go back to my designer friends and giving them talks. But the kind of the wake up moment for me came when I got a call from a business school. And this was completely unexpected because I was like, why would a business school want me to talk about empathy? And here's, me being very honest about my prejudice back then is like, oh, business people only care about money. They're these greedy people who only, talk about bottom lines and things of that sort. Why would they care about something as warm and fuzzy as empathy, right? So that was like kind of a weird experience for me. But I went because they wanted me. I'm like, who am I to refuse, right? So I went.
Sure.
And I gave this talk, and the whole time I'm there, I'm feeling very insecure. Like, am I like catering this to the right audience? Like, am I, actually providing value to these people? I have no idea. So I gave the talk and kind of a bit nervous state of mind. And then the Q&A period came. And that's where I first realized why they thought this was valuable, right? So I thought I was going to get questions about innovation, creativity, or design. Nobody asked me about that. Not a single person, right? The questions ended up being into 3 different categories of things. First was family. So this was an executive program, so people were in their late 50s or early 60s, many of them, right? And what was happening was many of them had children who just came back from university, and they were like their children was in their early mid-20s, right? And they were having massive conflicts with their sons and daughters at home. And they were at their wits' end. They're like, they were so sweet before they went off to college. And they went off to college and they learned something. I don't know, whatever that they learned. And they came back saying all these things that they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, but they say it anyways. And I try to tell them, they're wrong, and they keep fighting back with nonsense. And we just have this shouting matches over dinner. And I feel so hurt because they say so many hurtful things to me, right? So these are the executives who are saying these things, right? And I had no idea this was going on, number one. And I had no idea that would be the kind of questions I was going to be asked.
Can I ask you if this was U.S. or European?
This was U.S.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's the first kind of question. Second kind of question I got was they were having massive conflicts among the executive team, right? So for whatever reason, when they first got together, they gelled like jelly, and they were so great at working with each other. But something had happened along the way, and they couldn't figure out why some people stopped contributing ideas, why some people seemed very disengaged. They just couldn't figure out. And they said this was even more puzzling to them because they themselves thought of themselves as servant leaders. And they had subscribed to this idea of servant leadership for such a long time. So it didn't make any sense to them that these people will feel disengaged and passive because they were doing everything that they were being taught at school, and they were doing all the things that they thought was the right thing to do for servant leaders. So that was the second kind of question I got. The third kind of question I got, I think this one has since become very well known, is the generational issue, right? The millennials become a hot topic these days. So these people couldn't figure out why these youngins, and I think this happens every generation, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's anything new. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything new. Why these youngins don't seem to know the things that they know, or value the things that they value, or do the things that they want done, right? Why are they doing things on their own, kind of thing, right? And they were kind of confused as to whatever they're teaching in school these days is a bunch of baloney or something. Right? So those 3 kinds of questions are what I got, and I was only prepared to answer questions about innovation and design and creativity. So I was so surprised, but now I knew that this was a major thing in people's minds, and there were subsequent invitations to other business schools. So that really led me to study this and actually get my hands involved working directly with some of these people I met, trying to understand what's going on inside organizations that are, kind of giving rise to these issues.
You wouldn't expect that to come out of that group, would you?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think it's been a blessing for me because it really changed my perspective on many different things.
When I first looked at it, I was taken back for a second because it's an online program,
Yeah,
okay, and it's
yeah,
over 3 months long,
it is.
okay.
It is.
Why the length and and the challenge to keep everybody's interest level?
Well, here's what I learned. So what I did after I started giving talks is do workshops, right? So these are anywhere between like a half a day to 2 or 3 day long workshops, right? And in the beginning, I thought like, oh, this is gonna be fantastic. People are gonna be, together. We're gonna create this really, really safe and intimate group, and it's gonna be great. And it was great during the workshop. And then what I do is I tend to follow up after a workshop around like roughly about 6 month point, just to kind of catch up with people, but also to kind of see what impact the workshop has had on people. Well, to my humble realization, almost nothing has happened since the workshop. And I mean, but this was kind of a bit disappointing for me because while the workshop was going on, people seemed to really, really love the content. And at the end of the workshop, I would ask them like, what are some things you're going to take away? And they would have all these wonderful ideas. But when I caught up with them after 6 months, many of them said, well, it was really nice to be able to learn those things in the workshop context, but I don't think it's really realistic to do them in the workplace that I'm in. Or, I don't really feel safe to do that with when there's actual things at stake. And I'm like, okay, I totally understand, that you would feel that way, right? So as much as these workshops were a kind of a nice spark, the flame died fairly quickly. And that's something that I was determined to figure out a way to circumvent. And so what I've since been doing, not this online workshop, is I've been transitioning into the role of a coach. And I've been working directly with CEOs of small to mid-sized businesses. And in that context, what we do is a much longer engagement. And we specifically deal with the actual real world issues they're struggling with in their day-to-day life. And we have either a weekly or a bi-weekly session where we're working together to better understand the blind spots that are kind of giving rise to these conflicts inside organizations, and then come up with a prototype or a design that they could implement right away, something very, very, very small. And then they go off and do it for a week or a couple of weeks, and they're going to learn something, and they come back and we reflect on it together so that we have both perspective, an outside perspective and a first-hand perspective. And then we redesign the thing based on the thing that they've learned, and then we repeat, right? So not only are we actually handling real-world situations that they're struggling with, we're also have a much tighter feedback cycle where they're reflecting on things, trying things, maybe succeeding partially, failing partially, learning from it, redesigning it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that has been working fantastically. So what I'm trying to do is bring that way of learning, if you will, to this online form. So it's a workshop in its spirit because we're working, but it's not a workshop in the sense of like you go off for a couple of days and then sing kumbaya and then you go back to work.
Sure, sure. So I call that sort of, my lean people will recognize what you're explaining. It kind of has some similar roots to kata, or the Toyota kata that we teach in lean. Okay, there's the process here, and I call it like the art of deliberate practice, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
and
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so you structured your outline, I saw, into three different areas: a lab, gym, and reflection. And I think you just touched upon them. Is it, or maybe you should explain those three separately a little bit, or you sort of touched upon them there.
I did sort of touch upon that, but to go a little bit deeper, basically, so there is that basic structure of what I just talked about. The student or the participant is coming up with their own specific issue. And then there is this iterative process of us helping each other tackle that issue, right? So that's the basic structure. On top of that, we have these things like you mentioned, the gym, the reflection, and the lab, right? So the gym is basically where I'm going to bring as many of the tools that I've learned in this process as possible, right? Because there are some times when you want some tools that other people or other disciplines have found useful in their context, right? So I bring some of them and we actually try it out in the gym as if we're doing exercises, like we're just kind of developing our
Sure.
muscle. So in the gym, we learn tools, we try them out, and see which part of it could benefit us. And in the lab is where we're going to actually form a group to simulate a organization. So, for example, if there's 6 people in the program, one person will act the role of the CEO, maybe 2 people will act the role of like a middle manager, and then the other, I don't know, 3 people will become the practitioners or something like that, right? Now you've been trying a lot of things in your real life, and you're also learning tools. Now see how this manifests inside a complex system, even just with 6 people, right? And we're doing it in a safe environment. This is not actually your company, right? So you can try things out and really fail miserably here, and it's okay, right? So lab is for that, right? Lab is a larger kind of experimental space in which you can try new things out in the context of a system. And the reflection is basically, I mean, the reflections I have kind of highlighted are major reflections. We do small reflections as we go, but these 2 major points of reflection are we're only doing reflections, right? We're actually hearing what other participants have tried, what they've learned, and we're also sharing what we've tried and what we've learned. And we're learning from not only articulating what we've learned explicitly, but also hearing from what other people have learned, and then kind of by some kind of past or secondary experience, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with the way it's structured. I think that's a great idea that you have. But I'm going to go back to a question that you may have sidestepped, you may have answered. Okay,
Okay.
but how do you think you're going to keep someone's interest level for
Ah,
3 months? Okay, because
yeah,
that online subject. I mean, most online courses I've seen, people disappear.
yeah. Raise his hand. I've been there, done
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I think here's the thing, right? So in my mind, it's very similar to why anything else, why you lose interest in anything else. Like, I mean, we've all tried this. We tried going to the gym, and we tried to exercise, and we eventually lose interest, right? And I think part of the reason why we lose interest is there's a social component missing, right? And this is why I think CrossFit is significantly more successful than some one person going to the gym and trying to have this massive discipline of waking up and not forgetting to go to the gym and do other things. The social element, in my mind, is extremely important, and that is baked into this particular structure. Because if you notice, there's an element of both a peer coach and a professional coach, right? So peer coach is a buddy that is dedicated to helping you, right, practice what it is that you want to practice, right? And that person is not only there to help and support you, that person is also there to keep you accountable, right? And this person isn't keeping you accountable for the things that they want to keep you accountable for. They're only going to keep you accountable for the things that you want to be kept accountable. So you're going to pick what it is that you want to be kept accountable. Nobody's going to force you to do anything at all. You ask this person to keep you accountable in the way you choose. And then they're going to follow through it because of the way that the thing is structured, right? So there are structures baked into the system where you are setting yourself up for success. And then because it's coming from a genuine place of your interest, and we're going to, in the beginning, we're going to help you identify what it is that really, truly motivates you with high degree of emotion, such that with your internal drive and an external accountability partner, you will be able to sustain interest throughout this longer term engagement. And also the fact that I think the larger support network that happens and being able to hear their feedback and help for your specific situation, I think will also do wonders in terms of keeping people's interest.
I think you make some great points there. What type of person do you picture attending this program? Did you kind of paint that persona we all talk about before you started?
I didn't paint it, but I had an idea. The idea. So in my mind, what I've learned in the course of the past few years is if the running joke is this, right? So the light bulb joke is how many people does it take to change a light bulb?
I've heard all kinds of answers to that. Okay, 6, 8. Okay, and it probably depends if they're sea level or not. Okay.
So here's my answer. One person, but the light bulb really has to want to change. Right? So and this is to me the key, right? So I think most of the times what we see is people saying, you know what, they should change. It's always they. It's like
Yeah.
either
Oh,
the upper
yes. Yes. Yes.
or the upper management will say like the middle managers or the worker bees, whatever. It's always they have to change, right? So I actually don't want people who think that way to join this program because I don't think they will be successful. Because it will not help them at all. This is not going to help them kind of, convince other people to change. I mean, it really has to start with the person, right? Because what I found is if I change the way I behave, other people's behaviors change. And it's not because they're changing because now I've like enlightened them. Like it's just because, when I change my behaviors, their behaviors also change. And I think that is the most important thing I can highlight is if you are coming in with a mindset of wanting to change other people, I don't think that's the kind of person I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who intrinsically want to change the way they behave because they see value in that in and of itself. And that's going to be kind of a bit of a filter, so to speak, in terms of the kind of people that I'm looking for.
Is that really the outcome then of the program of going into it and coming out of it? I mean, if you were going to define an outcome, all right, I'm going to go in. I'm going to invest money. I'm going to invest time, okay, into this program. And the time is the most important element. What's it going to do for me at the end?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold, right? So if you're into measuring things, as some people are, I think the easiest way to measure is did my behavior actually change? Because that's very easy to see. And I think the better way to measure that isn't simply you kind of gauging yourself, but actually asking other people around you whether something about you have changed, right? So that's one way to think about it. But I think the greater value I think is in why do you want to change, right? So some people would say, I'm really having trouble getting my team to work more collaboratively with each other. And the initial instinct may be to reprimand them or tell them how horrible they are for being 30-something-year-olds and still not getting along with something. So and that doesn't usually work, right? So if that's your way of measuring your success, then you actually put that up front and say, so this is the quote unquote result I want to see. And to get that result, I'm going to change my behavior. And then as you go along, you're going to continue to measure your success by saying, okay, I've changed this, and how is that being perceived by other people? And then at the end of the day, if that result is achieved by as a result of you having changed your behavior, I think that is of value to yourself as well.
What I understand you saying is I'm going to say this is who I am. This is why I am. This is what I would love to see, and maybe this is what I hope to see. Put some milestones on there, kind of a scale between what I'd love to see and where I'm at now. Okay,
Yeah.
with certain behaviors, and see if I'm ramping towards that right during the course even.
Exactly. And once again, there are structures in place to catch if you're not making progress early on so that you can continuously change course so that you have a far greater chance of success.
I noticed in a couple of the lessons that you talked about writing this or documenting this somehow in it, and I think that goes in a lot of a lot of types of programs and stuff. But I want to ask you, okay,
Sure.
how important is the writing part of this work that you're going to do, or the documentation part of the work? I mean, can you go through this and just be a bystander, or is writing just a very integral part of it?
So I use the word writing a little bit loosely, right? So I think the thing that matters is that you're reflecting, right? And
Okay.
one of the ways I found reflection work well is when you externalize your thought and you can actually see or hear yourself think. And writing obviously does that because you're looking at yourself think out loud on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. And I'm sure anybody who's ever written a journal knows that as you write, you realize that you're wrong. And this is one of the most profound experiences I think we can have. Maybe we should have as many of these experiences as possible, because once it actually externalizes, something happens. And then we actually learn from doing that, right? So that's the way in which I've come to value writing, because it actually helps me learn better. Now, if that doesn't work for you, maybe you should think out loud and make a video. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter how exactly you quote unquote write, as long as you're actually able to externalize your thought, not keep it in your head, and then you're actually able to hear and see whatever it is you're thinking so that you can learn from that interaction. That's what matters to me.
It's great. What would you like to maybe sum up this program with? Okay, and make sure you mention where you can find it and things, but at the end, but kind of sum this program up. I mean, what are you hoping out of it? What's your reflection on it? Okay, I mean, what do you want to see at the end of it, the students get out of it? What would make you feel good?
I think what will make me feel good is students end up, I mean, of course, to the students, they'll feel good if they achieve the results they want to achieve. But for me, I find most fulfillment when students either come to realize that their struggles is not unique, that many, many, many people are having the exact same issues in leadership, exact same issues in trying to implement change in their organizations. And then there are a group of people that they can turn to and get help and support from. Because so many of these instances, I find them feeling extremely isolated and lonely and frustrated at the fact that they're not having the impact they want to have, right? So that's one part that's really important to me. The second part that's important to me is they realize that by deliberately practicing, like the way you said, and consciously engaging in human interactions with empathy, there is a sense of fulfillment that you can get from just doing that, even if there is no result, even if there's no thing that comes back to you, like just by having that genuine interaction, there's something magical about that. And I get that from interacting with my students and the executives that I coach. And I think I would love for them to also experience that. And that, I think, in some ways goes back to the idea that, yes, of course, by changing myself, it will influence others and it will change their behaviors. But that's not necessarily the point. The point is, when I change my behaviors, something about the quality of my life changes because of the way I choose to interact with people. And that is an ever-giving fuel and energy and life force that I really, really hope that people would get out of this course, even if that's not something that they expect from the course.
So where can I sign up?
Oh, right.
Where do I go?
I hate promotion. So go to program.realizingempathy.com. And there's also free events that I've scheduled that you can sign up to get kind of a taste of some of the experiential exercises we'll do. And I'll also share some of the case studies that I've learned over the years working with CEOs of these businesses about the impact of how stress impacts our ability to realize empathy, and how those things affect negatively bottom lines of business ventures or even give rise to unethical behaviors inside organizations. So once again, program.realizingempathy.com is where you can find it.
Okay, that's great. And I have to ask you one more question. Okay, and before I leave you go, what is next for you? Okay, where's your journey taking you? I mean, has this empathy, has it taken over your life?
I mean, I think so. I think empathy is a handle, right? It's served me well in terms of kind of opening the Pandora's box of the kinds of things that I was never aware of in the past, and because the handle is small, and yet it's big, right? Because it opens doors to something that I didn't know about. So it becomes kind of a bit of a compass for me. It's become a kind of a guiding light to find where my next step is without really knowing what my next step is. So what I'm doing nowadays is I continue my own personal journey and study of empathy in a variety of different relationships. And as long as I'm practicing what I preach, I will notice things about other people or the kinds of experiences I have where I start to understand that certain people need certain things and that need is not being fulfilled. And then I do whatever I can when that resonates to find a way to fulfill those needs. So that becomes a compass for me. Whatever the next step actually is, I have no idea.
Podcast will be available, of course, on the Business 901 iTunes store and the website. Make sure you tell all your friends about it and listen to it, and to tell them about Slim's new course at program.realizingempathy.com.
And I should mention one more thing. So for the listeners of this podcast, what I'm gonna do is there's a kind of an early bird period that ends on the 27th for a discount for the course. But even if you hear this podcast, if you enter the code B901 to one of the last questions that you submit for the sign up form, it's going to ask you, is there any last final words you want to say? It's kind of a magical question. If you simply type in B901 into that box, you'll still be eligible for that discount. So I want to let you know that.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. Thank you very much, Slim.